let's get you guys all unmuted and introduce you to Ryan, and we'll let the other guys come in as they do. So AJ, tell Ryan a little bit about yourself, and then when we're all done, then Ryan will have you introduced properly, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. I'm AJ here in West Hills, California, Van Nuys, California, wholesaler, retailer, manage a couple of collections, buy and sell sports, exotics, some hyper, and investment cars.
Cool.
Bill Nuccio, you're up.
Bill Nuccio, right outside of Chicago. Been here all my life. Been in the business 43 years, and we sell, I guess the best way to say it, everything no one needs.
Right.
We gravitate towards unique in any way. It could be a pickup truck for that matter, but we like putting stuff on the internet that we source out. We don't do any auction buying, and the uniqueness helps with the way people shop online today. When you don't have cars that everybody else has, it just makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as evidence of that, in my driveway, 15 feet away from me, is a 2002 Ford truck Bill sold me. About 2 years ago. Gavin, go ahead.
Gavin Riches, Southwest Florida. We are predominantly in the Porsche business. We just deal in Porsche GT cars, sell them, service them, upgrade them. We have quite a big online parts business. Business is good.
Great.
And Paul, you're driving. Where are you headed, sir?
I'm just heading into work right now for an appointment. How you guys doing? Paul Devers. I own a family 65 years in business. It's a Mercedes-Benz Audi Sprinter store in Sylvania, Ohio, which is northwest Ohio. We're right on the Michigan border. So obviously we have a large pre-owned department, do all makes and models, but specialize in Mercedes and Audis and Porsches and everything else, all makes and models. But my hobbies are classic Mercedes. I'm very involved in the Gullwing Group and different aspects of judging for the different concourse, which we're not having any this year. They're all canceled, it seems like. But I'm also, one of the guys mentioned they do hypercars, so I'm very much in touch with the Mercedes AMG 1 car, the Project 1 car. We've got 5 of those on order through our store, which is the number one volume store in the nation that has out of the 55, we've got about 10% of them on order in the United States. So if anybody has any questions or interest in the Project 1, I'm the dealer that can help you out on that, because I'm very well connected with AMG. Obviously, since we've been in business for a long time, I know all those guys. And so anyways, looking forward to hearing more information today.
I have a question, Paul. When are they going to come?
Yeah, Paul, I got questions too.
Yeah, so obviously they've been actually about a year and a half, or a little over a year ago, they almost pulled the plug on the program. It was in dire need of a lot more money put in. Before Dieter Zetcher retired as chairman, he dug up enough money to keep the program going. They didn't want to lose face. They said this car must be built. It is all designed, and the first car was just delivered to the Styling Dome in Stuttgart last week for all the executives to look at. Oh, this is what the exhaust will sound like. This is the radio. This is the interior. So they'll start production for the German market in March of next year. They want to do the market around Falterbach, AMG's headquarters first, so they can QC the cars, and then they'll roll out the rest of Europe. And the United States will probably start seeing job 1 in the fall of next year, going into the fall of the following year. So, so we're.
Do you have any of those allocations that aren't sold?
So everything's sold. There's no open allocations, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know. There was a real stringent vetting process where I sent in 9 clients, all worthy, but I got total of 5 cars approved because I really worked the system hard. And, you know, they had to show like $1 million worth of AMG purchases, and they had to show that they weren't going to flip the car and yada, yada, yada. So,
Sure.
but there's going to be, and there has been some clients turning in their production back to the factory. So that's where I just picked up another one. I had 4, I got 5 because I was pushing for a real good client. And the longer this takes, the more of these fragile partnerships, these guys are deciding that, you know, they don't want to wait this long, and they want their 500,000 euro deposit back. So that's how I can work with one of your clients. If you guys have someone, we can snag a return car.
Will they need to be vetted the same way?
They will need to be vetted, yeah, and I can help with that process. There's a 3-year no resale contract that's about 3 inches thick.
Wow.
You know, it even talks about Montana LLCs. You can't sell the LLC. I mean, and I begged Mercedes to not do that. I begged them to price the car at $1 million more and don't worry about trying to track these cars for 3 years. But so anyways, that's life in the world of like the Ford GTs and stuff for 2 years. Wow. It's a 3-year deal on this car, but it's going to be quite a car. I mean, I think this car will be a $10 million car in a few years after it comes out, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that one. I've got a friend of mine who has 1 allocation, and it's a Canadian guy, but I think the allocation is being given to him at his residence in the U.S. In Florida. So, and I've been, you know, trying to work with him, you know, to buy it off him, but I didn't know about this 3-year. I mean, I had to assume that there's something there, right?
Yeah, there's nothing to resell right now. It's really weird. There's like you can't buy a car. There's some rogue brokers in Europe that are trying to sell the cars. But sure, trust me, guys, there ain't nothing to sell because these customers have nothing to sell. Yeah, and there's a whole other signature process coming up and some new terms and agreements. Like you can't start the car if it's below 42 degrees. You got to preheat the car. There's other stuff they're going to want to sign. And
what's left on it? Like 3.2 or something?
2.7 is the price range they're in right now. So in American dollars, and the 55 U.S. cars to the United States, and I think the 8 or 10 to Canada and 5 to Mexico are unique to North America, you know, with different turn signals and stuff like that, and of course EPA. But I mean, this is a 1,000+ horsepower Formula One race car with four electric motors on the wheels. I mean, it's basically what Lewis Hamilton drives, every Sunday at the F1 races for street legal use. So it's very technical car.
What Lewis Hamilton goes to get milk in every day.
Well, they're not out yet, but so they'll start in March of next year. So what's March 2021, and then we'll see them in like 2022 for America to 2023. So they're still a couple years out still.
Yeah.
That's awesome. This is what's beautiful about the meeting. You never know what track will go down. That was incredibly informative for all of us. I really appreciate you sharing that, Paul. Thanks for bringing that up.
No problem. Thanks.
I want to get Adam a chance to tell us about himself, and then we'll introduce Ryan officially. Adam, are you available to talk? I'll unmute you here. Let's see. I can almost do it for him if he's not available. Adam Merlin has a dealership in or near Atlanta, and he specializes in Ferrari products. He's got some really talented people there, both in service and sales. Excuse me, and I consider him to be a really proficient retail Ferrari facility. Not that he doesn't do other Highline models, but it's an independent store that specializes in Ferrari. And Adam, if you want to chime in at any point in time, please feel free to do so. There you are. Can you hear?
Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not I don't know why I can't ever figure out the sound and the video on this thing. But anyway, no, that was great. Thank you, Scott, for I appreciate the nice words. We have a nice size Ferrari inventory. We have a full service shop. We do anything that's, rare and unique. We like to go for low market day supply so that we can do lower volume, higher margin, and we stand behind everything we sell. So it's good stuff. Thankfully, we've seen an uptick in business. The higher, more expensive stuff is still pretty cold, but we have seen more of that 80 to 120 price range get a little busier, and our service appointments have really picked up a lot, which is nice.
Excellent. So let's just jump in, and if other people come along, we'll grab them as they go. Ryan, I actually don't remember. I think you reached out to me first through one of our members that have been trading with Ryan for quite a while now. He reached out, and the member said, hey, why don't you call Scott and see if you can do something with him? So we basically structured a strategic partnership to try to expose our members on the site to the opportunity of Canadian cars being transported into the U.S. And Ryan's platform, I won't steal his thunder, but Ryan Davidson, let me introduce him. He is the CEO of TradeX Global. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yeah, TradeX Global, correct. Yeah.
TradeX Global. And so he'll share with you what they're all about, but I'm very pleased to tell you that we have worked through our relationship in a way that I think is very beneficial, and oddly enough, and how lucky we are, we're in the middle of this crisis of where do we get inventory. And so it is a really interesting opportunity to consider, and I think they've solved a lot of the challenges and problems that people have struggled with in the past of bringing Canadian cars into the U.S. So Ryan, without further ado, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about TradeX Global, and just jump right in and give us some background.
I appreciate it, Scott, and thanks for inviting me. I'm honored to be a part of this Dealer 20 meeting, and that you considered me to speak today. And to your point, there is a lot of changes, rapid changes going on in the car business. COVID, sparked the biggest decline of car values in a 30-day period, probably in 10 years, and then proceeded to spark the biggest increase of car values back probably above where we were prior to when the whole thing started in March. So, I think that in conjunction with the fact that the used car business, the car business in general, has really been kind of, antiquated and very bricks and mortar, and, at least on the B2B side. B2C, you've had kind of the more consumer-facing, sexy, platforms and technologies, and but B2B really has been dragging. And you look at the kind of evolution of the used car distribution, at least in North America. You started with bricks and mortar auctions. You have ADESA and Manheim, and the long tail of all the independent auctions, which there are hundreds or could be thousands in all the states and provinces here. And that was really how it was done. That and wholesale.
Hold on a second. There we go.
And that was nice music.
Oh, that was good though. Good segue.
Beatles.
And listen, don't forget to tell us about you.
Yeah. No, I'll get to that. So I just just to finish off, kind of the evolution of the business, going from bricks and mortar and wholesalers, and then from there, really going into they put a camera in the lane 20 years ago, so that they went from good to better. Say, okay, now a dealer in New York can buy a car in California without getting in a plane, flying there for the day, spending the day buying cars and flying back. So that was great. It really opened up the market. And again, ADESA and Manheim grew exponentially. And then the latest being, the digital auction, the ACVs, the smart auctions, the trade revs, et cetera. And this really moved from better to best. And I think this is where the real disruption is going to take place in this industry. So background, on myself, my family has been in the car business in Canada since 19 16. We had the first used car dealership in Whitby. My great grandfather, he was the mayor at the time. He became the first GM dealer in 1924. And then my grandfather had a Chrysler store, which was passed to my father, other new car stores, leasing companies. So it's over 100 years in my blood in this country. Obviously I participated in, painting poles on the lot when I was young, really young, and then moved into service and parts and sales and used and new and wholesale and finance, everything. I went to Northwood University for automotive marketing.
Yay, Northwood. Yay.
Yeah, Northwood, yeah.
Same here.
There we go. So came out of there, started, couldn't get out of there fast enough, started a subprime operation in about 2003, and started doing subprime financing for cars and boats and bikes, etc. Built that business and sold it in 2009, albeit probably a little bit late, but a year early, I probably have an extra zero. But anyway, it was an exit nonetheless. And in that time from 2003 to 2010, I also started a company called Easy Results. That was basically a software company that built a CRM for dealers here in Canada. And the premise was, in addition to doing at that time SEO and website design and stuff was hot. In addition to that, we built basically a kind of a desking tool for managers to basically take credit decisions from, at the time, Dealer Track, which was 360 Funding, became Dealer Track. Basically took those approvals and cross-reference your inventory to basically sort by profitability based on the advance rate, the term, the payment call, et cetera. So really just a more efficient way of desking a deal that might take you, an hour to figure out what the right car is for the customer that only has $1,000 down and, can afford $250 a month, whatever. So I only kind of mention that, it just goes to show I've always been thinking of more, efficient ways to kind of digitize processes, et cetera. So, while this kind of digital transformation is going on, it kind of starting really with, the smart auctions and the trade revs, now ACVs, and eventually you're going to see a lot of them. And I think they're going to grow very, very rapidly. But while that kind of process was happening, I sold that business, sold the software business, and I got into export. And I started, first I got into more B2B sales cross-border for luxury stuff, Bentleys, Ferraris, Rolls, that type of car, and built a really big network in Canada, started selling cars from Canada to Middle East, to Europe, to Africa, Southeast Asia, China. Started doing the same thing in the US, but really to China. Started doing the same thing in Mexico to Middle East, to Africa, China, Europe, Southeast Asia, and really started to build a kind of global, export business, which, eventually, became kind of the foundation upon which TradeX, the idea of TradeX was born. So about 5 years ago, I came up with an idea, maybe four or 5 years ago, to build a platform like TradeRev, like ACV, like eBlock, like any of these guys, a B2B platform, but that called to the world's highest bidder, and that basically navigated and automated the processes that going to get a car from one market to another. So the payment processing, the logistics, the currency exchange, the biggest being the transactional or trade financing, if you will, and really put those all in one transparent marketplace where buyers and sellers could come together, disintermediate all of the importers and exporters and brokers that are in the middle of all of these transactions, and allow dealers on either side to kind of go and deal direct. To give you an idea, last year, there were, over 300,000 used cars were sold from Canada to the US. This year, there'll be more. And right now, all of that business is being done by importers and exporters. Most dealers in the US just don't know the process. it's fairly cumbersome. You have the fact that floor planning in the U.S. permits, for the most part, dealers to buy vehicles that don't have titles or bond clear, which somebody's going to have to put cash out for 30 days, and most dealers don't have cash. They have floor planning. So same thing on the Canadian side. You've got dealers who are selling cars. As soon as the car leaves the country, they actually have to pay the car off. They're in breach of their floor plan. So hence in lies the opportunity for a platform to basically kind of transactional or trade finance that vehicle while it gets exported. So we raised some money in July of 2018. Did a kind of a seed round. Friends and family built the platform over a couple years through beta, alpha testing, and transacted $30 or $40 million just between related parties, and use that feedback to kind of further optimize the platform until we had something we were ready to launch, which we did here in Canada from a country of export. Just so you understand, we look at countries of export as being kind of the main: Canada, US, Mexico. Believe it or not, the volume as far as it relates to a GMV, the total sales volume from Canada outbound is very similar to the US. So even though it's a much smaller market, our price point is more attractive to global buyers, especially those who are pegged against the USD. And so there's a significant volume of cars that get exported from this country, both to the US and many, many other countries. Dozens of countries are buying cars from Canada. We're talking hundreds of thousands and tens of billions of dollars of total GMV. Currently, of course, there's no platform for this. You've got all these, auction platforms that can allow for local trade, but you don't have any that can facilitate a buyer and seller in two different countries. So we built the platform. We launched in March. Of course, March 15th was not the best time. Things got a little rocky, and as far as on the fundraising side, things kind of paused for us. We were in the process of basically getting term sheets from 4 different funds. We were working with Goldman and some other big ones, and we had a couple, one for 100 million US and another for 150. And basically what that's for is when a deal is done on TradeX, seller drops the car, we do a condition report to make sure that the car is, what the buyer, thought it was and what the seller indicated that it was. And once we receive that car clear of liens and the title, we pay the seller net of the fees. And then we basically bring it to the US. We do all the titling process. And in 30 days, when the vehicle is ready, the buyer then picks it up from that point in the US. So there's a 35 to 40 day basically period where deal is done and somebody has to front the money. So we need, to do 50 million a month in sales, we need 60, 75 million dollars in basically kind of facility in place to transact. So that put a pause, but we did kind of roll out with some, another fund that we raised with kind of existing investors and high net worth individuals, and have been growing at a rapid 50% growth month over month. What we've seen is the buyers that are getting on the platform and buying some cars, they start off buying one, they say, okay, let's test this out. And then they say, okay, well, that worked. We want 5 more. Okay, that worked. Now we want 150. Say, well, holy Christ, we don't have the money because, at first they don't know us. They don't know, whether they can even sell a Canadian car. But as it turns out, because we do full homologation and conversion and Speedo is done and changed, you're talking about 2 cars that were built in the same factory. They're identical in every way. And manufacturers, especially late model stuff, are more and more basically making them, conforming to multiple jurisdictions so that to reduce their overall parts costs. We launched a platform. Things are going really well. We kind of launch what we call a limited audience. So we really are restricting the number of sellers and buyers at this point. On July 17th, we're kind of moving into a less restricted version where we could onboard everyone on this, in this meeting and others. But again, kind of limited to the amount of cash flow. Our diligence process is kind of underway right now with one of the funds, and we're looking to close on this facility in September. So that's really going to be when, when we kind of launch to the general audience, and we're going to do a significant marketing campaign. You're going to hear about TradeX everywhere. We're engaging, Deal Shield equivalent underwriters through Assurant to basically underwrite a similar product, so that dealers that maybe are trepidatious with respect to picking up Canadian cars and with a 30-day lead time say, okay, no problem. You don't sell it after 30, 45 days, return it for all your money back. So we're going to do the same thing there. We basically, just to give you an idea about, the platform, it's a two-sided marketplace. Currently, it's not an auction. That could change in the future, but right now, our first version is kind of just a marketplace. Buyers and sellers can talk. They can chat in any language at any time, they basically transact. We book all the FX currency, so there's no currency risk for either buyer or seller, and we basically facilitate the transaction with full visibility from the buyer. The buyer posts a deposit that can be as little as $1,000. That would be the minimum deposit, and could be as much as 10% based on the selling price and as it relates to wholesale value in the U.S. So we ask, if you're basically, buying and paying later, choosing the pay later as opposed to pay now option, that you would post a deposit, and then we would finance the car until at which point the bond was clear and it was ready to pick up. On the fee side, we're charging a 1% buy fee, which is currently being waived. So there is no buy fee, and that'll be probably for the whole year. And there's a 1% pay later fee. So if you want to pay up front, there's no fee, zero. If you want to pay later, which is the 30 days once the vehicle is clear a bond and has a title, then there's a 1% fee for that period of time, which typically represents about 30 days. We also have something called the Brain, which is like MMR kind of thing, but the difference is we're pulling data from Canada and US, and we're layering it with currency and a live shipping feed, admissibility, so we filter out any inadmissible vehicles. And we basically then have kind of a data repository or predictability machine where when a VIN number is entered or submitted, we can tell you where in the world that car is worth more, currently just from Canada or US. And we can tell you that there's a 17.5% upside for buyer or seller, depending on who kind of wins the tug of war there.
Yikes. Well, there's a first for our meetings. I'm sure he'll figure out how to get back in. So I've got a number of things that I'm going to bring up to Ryan when he gets back on. I've always been intrigued with the dealers that have actually traded in Canadian cars. It's been a little mystical, if you will. I've only imported one. I did a 89 Countach anniversary back in 2016. And it was a pretty arduous process. Has anybody else ever gone through the importation of a car from Canada? Okay, looks like most everybody. So you kind of understand the gist. And when Ryan and I first spoke, the significance is that they're trying to take all those pain points and logistics issues out of the equation for the two parties that are transacting. And the fee structure, the way they did it and the way they're presenting it to our members and to you guys is they're laying the fee structure on the seller side. So basically, when you have a value that you see a car posted on the list, that's going to be the value you're going to pay in the U.S., delivered on a U.S. border. You pick it up there and no extra issues. There are certain cars that they have in process, so not every car is 30 to 40 days out. So that's the one thing I want to make sure, and I was going to bring up to you and bring up to Ryan to clarify. There are certain circumstances where they've got a car that is in queue already. Someone's committed to the importation process. So they're not all going to be, oh, I'd like to have that car, but I can't wait 30 days to get it. So I think it's a very interesting program. We've vetted it to the best of our ability to understand if we think it's going to be viable and a solution. And I think in many cases it will. I think it's going to be a slow path for our members to kind of get used to it. I think it's very true that, you know, you might do one and that works out well and you'll look to do another. But it's just another interesting and unique form of opportunity as it relates to our retail customers that we engage with. Some people don't care about a bad Carfax car. Some people don't care if a car's got paintwork. Some people really don't care if a car came from Canada. It's not everybody, but in certain circumstances, it is a viable solution. And if nothing else, it's an alternative to interact with your client. Look, have you ever considered a Canadian car? And would you? So it looks like he's connecting back to audio here, and we'll let him get back in and get started.
It's my bad. Computer died.
Awesome. Okay.
We're back.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. So
The brain.
The brain.
So basically, we've got now basically a predictability machine, which the reason for the brain, it's has several kind of key functions for us. Number one, the seller is loading a car. We want to kind of, massage the seller into offering the car at a price point that works for the buyer. So we need to educate them on, what that number is. In order to obviously increase conversion, we don't want them to ask too much. We want the buyer to, have some fun left. And then on the same time, we use that brain to basically go, it has its own bot and it goes and scrapes all the websites. So we scrape Kijiji and Auto Trader. We scrape all of the auction platforms in Canada. We now have a deal with Chrysler Financial, Discount Car Rental, Enterprise Remarketing. Basically take all of their inventory and we scrape it. And we know based on the current rate, based on the shipping costs, based on Speedo, based on everything, net landed in the US compared to a US car, fully converted with a US title compared to a US car, what the difference is, what the ARB is. And then we can start to encourage buyers and or sellers to transact based on those opportunities. And I can tell you that those opportunities change with the wind. I mean, Trump opens his mouth, the peso drops, the Mexican Mustangs become cheaper than they are in Canada, and Taiwanese importers start importing from Mexico instead of Canada. And this stuff happens, real fast. Supply and demand obviously is a factor. Currency is a factor. And this really gives us visibility into that market. Again, we're starting with Canada as a country of export. We'll be moving into the US as a country of export. So currently, Canadians are the only ones that could sell on the platform. Within 6 months, you'll be able to sell from the US outbound. We have thousands of buyers all over the world on the platform that are looking for all types of very unique inventory. So the other thing is, obviously the brain is helping for basically kind of determining which dealers we onboard. So if we've got a dealer that has 500 cars in their inventory, and we run an analysis, and 40% of their inventory has a higher wholesale value in the U.S., well, we're probably going to call that dealer and say, hey guys, you're retailing your car what these cars are worth wholesale in the U.S. So you might want to consider putting them on the platform. But then you have a different user that might be selling $5,000 cars in some little town with a trailer, in which case an analysis of that inventory might uncover zero. So we wouldn't obviously onboard that dealer. So we're really trying to use it to get the lowest hanging fruit to increase our conversion. one other thing that we have, which, you know, was kind of part of the reason why Scott and I started talking in the first place, it was actually Perrin from Chicago Motor Cars that put us on, and he's a big customer of ours. He's looking to buy, you know, 100 Canadian cars a month now, just because he's having such, you know, success selling them and obviously making money. But one of the other features that we have is something called an instant request. And the instant request is basically allows buyers to, similar to your inventory needed, put out a request, say, hey, I'm looking for this, you know, in this range, or, you know, whatever number of vehicles, 5, 10, whatever it is. And then those requests come to all of the sellers in Canada, and they can start to offer you those cars. And of course, you have this third party trusted, you know, kind of escrow in the middle that can make sure that the, you know, the transaction is kind of safe and goes through. So, I mean, that's really on TradeX. As far as the fees, I told you the buy side, the seller, they pay a 3.5% fee. That fee is based on a couple things. One being we actually do all of the tax ITC. So USA is one of the only countries in the world that doesn't have VAT. Every other country does, right? So when we buy a car here for 100 grand, we actually pay 113. And then when we sell the car, we collect the 13,000 back if we've sold it outside of Canada. Now, if we sell it in Canada for 101, we collect 101 plus 13%, and we just remit tax on the difference on the profit. So that's how we kind of balance our books, and you do monthly filings. But if you're selling all your cars for export, which TradeX does, or any exporter, then you've got a considerable receivable, and it can be 30 days, could be 40, it could be 6 months. Depends on how long the government, you know, and your paperwork and whether they audit you. And there's a lot of stuff there, right? We've been doing this a long time, so we're on a tight turn there. But you know, a new guy in the business can have their books audited and tie up after 6 months at 13%. You're damn near all of your working capital tied up in HST. So you know, by paying the seller the HST, we take that basically receivable on, and that's one of our value propositions. The other thing, obviously, being that we're getting them buyers in markets that are willing to pay more than local, and it's not a lot more. The ARB is usually in favor of the buyer, not the seller. Let's say kind of, you know, as I said, depending on who wins the tug of war, but it's 25-75 usually. So there's typically a, you know, pretty good upside for U.S. dealers, and yeah, I mean, that's why we're seeing this kind of overwhelming demand right now.
So the other, if I may ask a question.
Open up to questions at the end. There's a couple other things I want to mention, but I've said a lot, so maybe you can hit me with questions, because I'm sure there's got to be some at this point.
Yeah, one thing I want to make sure that the members understand, you've got to have some sense of the spread between your most recent experiences between U.S. dealers and the Highline side. Are you seeing a 3, 5, 6, 8, 10% spread on typical transactions in the $50,000 to $150,000 range vehicles? What kind of expectation, I guess, is what I'm asking?
5 to 25.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a car that would be 100 here might be as little as 70 to 75 in certain circumstances, as it's Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, that's 25 to 30. Yeah, that's bang on. Look,
Wow.
here's the thing. Okay, so currently, and I said that we're limiting the number of sellers. So when we launched TradeX, we actually launched with only one seller, because that one seller could easily facilitate all of the buyers that we had for 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 4 month as we ramp up. Obviously, in September, when we basically draw on a huge credit facility, and in addition, there's a mini IPO that we're doing, which I'll talk about. But we will have the ability to serve many more sellers. We wanted to limit the sellers because we want to limit the experience, at least in the beginning, as we kind of ramp up. So the seller that's on the platform is an exporter, and they're buying from dealers and then selling them. So they're actually trying to make the ARB. They're not an agnostic, unbiased TradeX platform that only takes a fee and says we don't care about the ARB. They do care about the ARB. So once you have sellers that are kind of less concerned about the ARB, now obviously they want to sell for the highest number, but in Canada, if a wholesaler offers you $45,000 for a car and someone else offers you $45,500, you're going to take it. So it doesn't have to be beat by a lot, right? You're buying as it sits here. TradeX is doing all of the work. So as a buyer, you're basically buying at Canadian price, and then you have someone else taking it here, and the whole thing is only 5%. So if there was 25, you're kind of left with 20, you know. So it depends on the car. And there are cars even now that actually make sense, even with the dollar today, in the U.S. coming to Canada. Sure. At the same time, 300,000 cars are going to the U.S., I'll bet you 10 to 50,000 are coming into Canada, because there are cars, you know, Rolls Royce, Phantoms, Wraiths, Dons, not Cullinans, Lamborghini, anything but Urus. Urus are cheaper here. This is what I mean. There's no rhyme or reason. Corvettes are cheaper in the U.S., but all other GM trucks are way cheaper in Canada. We sell a ton of GM product, Ford product, and a lot of very unique stuff. You know, I told you we have Peter Kloot, legendary motor car, who gets all, you know, Kulu and you know, Policaro Group, whose Motion Endeavors. This is everything, everyone that's on this panel, that's what they're selling. The same kind of stuff. So, you know, we're seeing, and I forget who it was, I think it might have been William, that was saying the high-end stuff, really high-end stuff isn't selling. Or AJ, I forget who it was, but the really high-end stuff isn't really selling. It's kind of that, you know, middle sweet spot. That's what we're seeing. You know, the Sennas that are posted are not, you know, getting enough money. But, you know, Audi R8, you know, premium or performance plus, like they're that kind of, that 100 to 200,000, even 250. You know, that's the spot.
So let me ask you a question. Did anybody notice the R8 that Ryan posted in the last 7 days? It's okay if you didn't. That's the point of it. And Ryan, did you get any response?
I didn't get actually any response. Perrin messaged me and bought it immediately. Bought all the R8s. I had 3 of them. He bought every one. So yeah. Gone. So now has asked me to buy more. So
what I think's happening, guys, is what we're trying to do is we've got a little bit of a benefit in that we're in this platform as an early adopter, and to the degree that you try to take advantage and look, at least take the energy to work through some of the posts that you're going to see. I think it's easy for us to presume how the list has functioned and worked for years. It is what it is. I kind of got used to it all. This is a disruptor for us on our inventory postings. And so what I'm trying to emphasize is I think it's a benefit for us to have access to this early adoption scenario. If you think down the path of when there's more volume, if you're accustomed to and have transacted a few deals, it's going to be easier for you to grow with the volume. And as we get to a 6 to 12 month period where there might be distinguished inventory pieces that you're accustomed to that are going to Germany or England, or, oh, Germany's buying, you know, 450 SLs or whatever it is at the classic side, this could be, in my humble opinion, an opportunity for us to level the opportunity to actually trade internationally, where we would be like, I don't want any part of that. I don't want to deal with the logistics and the, you know, the uncomfortable nature of doing something new like that. I think to build and to make a special effort to watch these posts and to know that Corinne's been taking advantage of this for some time now, and he's obviously not buying these cars because they're not selling. He's buying them because
he'd kill me if I told you that. But he started off at 1 or 2. He started, we'll try it out. GT3 RS. I sold a 2019 GT3 RS. It had It had 2,600 miles. It was chalk gray with the YSAC package, with the gold wheels loaded. Beautiful car, perfect car. And I sold him the car for 175 landed. And I think he sold it for 25K more or something. That was a fast deal. Then I had his attention. Then he bought 4 or 5 more. Now he's bought kind of everything that comes on that's like in his wheelhouse. And I had a call with him and his team the other day, and they said, we're building an entire section for Canadian cars. We want to buy 100 a month. So clearly they're making money. I mean, or he's just, maybe they don't have cars in the U.S. and this is the only supply. So I'm really not sure. But I can tell you this same theme is happening with every buyer. We have a buyer, they start off with 1, then they want 5, then they want 10, now they want 150. At pickup.
Who finances these cars?
Pardon me?
Who finances these cars? When they're Canadian cars, isn't financing a little difficult to get?
Are you saying financing? Oh, once the vehicle's in the U.S.?
Yeah.
No, not that we know of. I mean, there's no issue with financing. See, the thing is, if it was a European car, absolutely. But Canada and the U.S. have a unique situation where we share similar conformance and compliance. And with the exception of an odometer change, everything else is the same. There's very little that needs to be done, which is why we have this sharing agreement. The USMCA allows for cars to come from Canada. Technically, they should be doing the same with Mexico. They don't, but Mexico cars technically should be allowed in to the US. They are allowed into Canada. But anyway, that aside, Canada and US are very unique. Obviously, it's 25 years old or older. It can come in from Europe into the US. But anything within 25 years, there's only one place, Canada. And there's a reason for that, because the vehicles are very compliant. They share all the same parts. They're built in the same factories. They have this very similar specifications. And I think it's more and more in recent years that they're very similar. They're trying to kind of lower their overall parts cost by, kind of building one vehicle that's compliant for multiple markets. So to that end, the average selling price, now this is an important thing, and I can't speak to ThaList or Bring a Trailer. I don't know. But I can speak to ACV and eBlock and TradeRev and Smart Auction. I know all of them. ACV is like $9,000 average car. Yeah, you'll get these cars that are high, but right down 9. I think they're trying to drive that up, but they have cars on there that are $500. Smart Auction is 14 or 15. That's because they have the Maserati account that drives that up a bit. But again, not very much. TradeRev is 11 or 12. eBlock is in the same block, in the same area, 12 grand. Our average last month was $58,000. So we're talking about cars that are on average 5 to 6 more expensive than any other platform. So we are a premium brand, and we're a premium brand not necessarily because we're selling, Ferraris and Lamborghinis. We're selling cars that are later model with lower kilometers, And the other thing to kind of think about is that in the U.S., a lot of, these auction sites, people are bringing cars there. If you're a dealer, why do you sell a car? You sell because you didn't sell it, didn't, drive right or look right, or was missing something, or it didn't smell right for whatever reason, or you just had bad luck, bad sales guy, who knows. So you sell it. It's 60 days, 70 days, whatever your rule is, you launch that car. But you're typically launching a car that didn't sell. It's getting recycled back for one reason or another. You're not taking perfect trades, selling them on those platforms, because you want to retail those cars and make money.
Hey, Ryan,
yep.
Paul's got a question.
Sure.
Hey, Ryan. So explain this speedometer issue. I know a lot of these electronic Mercedes, I can switch it from kilometers to miles per hour on the dash, but do we have to send speedometers back to have them changed, or explain that to me a little bit more?
Yeah, we do all of it. That's part of our process. So every single car that you buy on the platform, all of the speedometers are changed. Everything is done and compliant in miles per hour. And you're right. The cost for flipping a button is zero, right? You hit a button, it's now in miles. It's it goes from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Very easy. The problem comes is when they're, like a G550 4x4 squared. I sold 3 of those to Perrin. I had to change the cluster on all 3, and the cluster was $1,500 or $2,000. But we know that. We know what it costs. We work it in, and we cover it. And Perrin still bought them 20 grand below wholesale. So, he's got a car that's titled in miles, with warranty. So the other thing is we don't sell vehicles currently on the platform that have no warranty. So the warranty, Can-Am warranty is obviously a thing. For example, Chrysler doesn't have Can-Am warranty unless it has a fleet code, which is a sticker on the door. Typically it was a rental, previous daily rental, or it came from Chrysler, the manufacturer. Then the warranty's good in both. Ford, it's good everywhere. GM, it's good everywhere. Audi, it's good everywhere. Porsche, it's good everywhere. BMW, it's good everywhere. Mercedes is a tricky one. Mercedes, some dealers in the U.S. seem to know certain Mercedes dealers, or maybe they are Mercedes dealers. And Paul, you could probably speak to this, but seem to think they can activate the warranty no problem. And if you go on Mercedes website, it says that they are warranty is valid in Canada and U.S. But then you'll have stories of people that are going and they're getting rejected for warranty. So that one is maybe kind of a gray area. And we're, working on, trying to kind of open that up more. But in the meantime, again, we want the lowest hanging fruit with the least amount of stress. So we're filtering out all admissible vehicles, cars that don't have warranty. We don't really want to show them because we don't want to have to go down that road in the beginning. Maybe in the future we're doing 2,000-3,000 cars a month and everything's great. And people are complaining there's not enough. Mercedes, we'll say, okay, fine, buy at your own risk. If you know you can turn the warranty on, then go ahead. So that's kind of how we're handling that.
So Ryan, does every car always take 30 to 40 days?
Well, so NHTSA, which is the governing body that controls the import of vehicles, it's the Highway Traffic Act into the U.S. Their 30-day conformance bond basically suggests that they need up to 30 days to confirm that the vehicle is conforming. The funny thing is we know it's conforming the second it touches the U.S. soil because there's a sticker that's on the door of the car, which is mandatory from a seller to upload so that we can verify this. We verify it again when it gets to one of our warehouses, and we also use AIM that does all our inspections for condition reports. So it'll be similar to the out of 5 grade that you guys are all used to. But the sticker basically indicates that the vehicle is conforming. The other thing is that if NHTSA approves a vehicle, a 2018 Ford F-150, 3.5 liter engine, crew cab, whatever, and it's conforming, well, then the next 2018 Ford F-150 3.5 is conforming. Nothing's changed. We know that all of those cars and anything in that VIN range, they're all conforming. Because once one conform, they're all conform. The problem is NHTSA is not organized. They do everything manually, and they do everything very painfully slow. So when they say it can take up to 30 days, at 30 days it's the maximum, and then we'll just release the car. Well, it's very rare that you'll get it done before then, but technically it should be. And we are also working with NHTSA to digitize their process to make that whole thing more efficient, to have a data repository that we can serve in a more automated fashion so that we could reduce that number of days. Because obviously it's in our best interest for buyers. But again, to my point, if let's say Deal Shield was worked in or subsidized into the cost of every vehicle, then you'd be buying a car to say, well, sure, okay, here's my cost. I'm going to get all my money back. I know I have to wait 30 days, but it doesn't really matter because the insurance factors in the lead time, and it also factors in that it's a Canadian car. We'll take a shot. I'm pretty confident that the same Perrin effect will happen where they'll sell 1, then 2, then they want 5, then they say, shit, we have a 5 to 10% edge right now that no one has. Let's go crazy. That's really what's happening.
Yes, I am excited and fearful that this is an early adopter scenario. This most likely will taper as time goes on. So it goes back to the classic concept of being an early adopter. You know, where are you in a 1 to 10? When the guy first walked into your office and said, hey, you should have a website. And you said, I don't need a website. And then eventually you got one. And now you couldn't fathom not having one. So, you know, if you were the guy that said, first invitation, you need a website. Okay, I'll do it. You're a 1. If you're the last guy, because you had to, you're a 10. I don't know where you guys are, or as we play this and this is being recorded, it'll be presented to the membership. I don't know where each person is going to be at. That's up to them. But it is, in my humble opinion, a very significant early adopter opportunity where the spreads are going to be greater now. And to the degree that you focus on those inventory pieces that get presented to you on the list, you're going to win. You'll win more now than as more people figure it out. So it just so happens at this point in the industry, we are starving for product. So it's like the perfect sweet spot where you're an early adopter with bigger spreads in a time when there's no inventory.
Yeah, and the other side is, to my point, is that in 6 months to 12 months, hopefully on the shorter end of that, we will be in the U.S., allowing U.S. dealers to post their inventory to global buyers. You know, Paul, you said that I know obviously you can't sell that Project One. I get that, but I have a guy on my platform that's bought several Sennas, millions of dollars in Lambos and everything, who would take that car with $1 million profit in your pocket in a heartbeat. You know, we don't care anymore. We just take our fee. We hope everyone makes money. But I get, you know, we're buying, you know, Rolls-Royce Cullinans in the U.S. and exporting them to Vietnam right now. The dealers who are selling are making, you know, significant profit, 10% margins. I mean, 10% margins like that. I know because I have a lot of friends who are, you know, Rolls-Royce dealers there, and they are definitely not making that. In fact, the U.S. seems to kind of drop their pants way more than they do in Canada. Well, I guess there's more inventory. It's a more competitive market, so it makes sense, especially on those more unique vehicles. But, you know, here we have access to stuff. Pfaff Auto Group, which is a you know, big group here. Chris Pfaff is also partnered with a guy named Carlo Fidani, who's, you know, kind of a top Forbes list 100, you know, top 100 guy. You know, their central inventory department is in the process of working to onboard their inventory. They've got Mercedes, they've got Porsche, they've got Pfaff Reserve, so they have all the stuff you guys are talking about. And I'm telling you, maybe there's no room for an exporter to get in the middle of the transaction, but there's definitely room for TradeX to do it, and both buyer and seller to be very happy. Scott, to your point, I mean, this will taper for sure. I mean, this is going to, obviously this could change, you know, if we're exporting all of our used cars here, actually it could drive the number of new cars that are sold, because there won't be as many used cars, or the price of used cars will be driven up to a point where it makes more sense to buy new. Who knows what, you know, we can't necessarily prognosticate what's going to happen, but we do expect that it will be some form of significant kind of reverberations in the market here, because you know, look, I'm talking with guys at Cox Automotive, chief legal officer here, who vets all their deals. You know, this kind of thing is on their radar right now. So it's just our job to, look, we'll go, close our facility. We're doing a Regulation A financing, which is kind of like an SEC regulated version of crowdfunding. We're doing that in September, which is an offering that's going to go out to, some investor groups that they have, these platforms, whatever. But the main target is new and used car dealers in the U.S. So we're going to go to 70,000 of them through different channels, basically give them the opportunity to invest in the company in the Series A round. All dealers know about the ACV unicorn. They know about, all these Vroom, $5 billion IPO. Everyone knows about all this stuff. Everyone's either missed out on it before it was private, before it went public. And there's an opportunity for dealers to invest in the company while it's private, while it's still, pretty small and at a pretty low valuation. We've got, working with Goldman Sachs, working with some big partners who are throwing a lot of money behind us, and feel that this is a significant segment in the market that's been overlooked. And so I think we have a lot of support. Again, for some, it doesn't work. I think a lot, from my side, I was a trader and I used to import cars years ago, 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. Actually, we were exporting and importing. And a lot, US, Canada have always been kind of partnered in that. And when we were importing cars from the US into Canada, there was some arb to be made, but it was never like it is today. This is something I've never seen before. And it almost, begs the question, how did the manufacturer these cars so wrong, from Canada to US, or miss on the currency. So I think that, there's going to be a fairly significant rise in this type of business. I think people are looking for competitive edge. I think this is something we can offer. And I feel that, for the stigma to kind of get, to overcome that stigma of a Canadian car, I think it's just going to take volume and kind of more in your face. When we were importing cars from the US into Canada, at first people were like, oh, Porsche, US Porsche hit at 5% or 10%, hit at 5-10%. But more and more cars came in, and we saw them. They were in miles. We flipped them to kilometers. Now it's like, this car was made in Germany. It's exactly the same car. There is zero difference. So why is it so? It's got a Canadian ownership. What the hell? And eventually that 10 went to 8, went to 5, went to 2. Now it's the same. Doesn't matter. US car here, it's the same. So I think the same thing's going to happen. I mean, 300,000 cars went into the US last year from Canada. I don't know how many the year before, but I'll bet you it's 500,000 this year. And I'll bet you it's going to be a lot more next year, especially with TradeX and other factors that are pushing. Next year has already started to, kind of modify their the security on their floor planning for dealers to allow exporters and importers to transact. But what TradeX is going to do is actually just disintermediate all of those and just allow dealers like you to cut out all the people who are making the arb and go directly to the seller and buy a car right. So the only downside being you've got a 30 to 35 day, lead time, which, really in the grand scheme of things, isn't once you kind of get your head around it, it's not difficult. And the fact that it's, previous Canadian. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ryan. We're going to wrap up here. We're a little bit past the time, but really helpful and glad to have a record of this so we can refer back to it, and we're going to share it with the membership. And I just encourage each one of you, anyone that watches this later, if you have questions, reservations, concerns, or have anything that you wish would have been asked, just reach out to me, and then we'll get with Ryan and we'll work through it. I do think it's a very viable solution and opportunity. And I think especially if you present it to your retail customers as they might be processing an in-warranty car right now. I know a lot of you guys don't stock that many in-warranty cars. Paul, you do, of course. But the specialty guys, maybe not so. But you know people that buy cars that are in warranty. And so I just believe that as we work toward integrating into the system and understanding how it works, you'll be more comfortable when that really killer deal comes along and you want to do it, instead of like, oh, I've never done a deal with these guys before. How does this work? I really want this car. But so I just kind of encourage you to watch the posts, look for the opportunities, and don't be afraid to reach out to Ryan and say, okay, I'm gonna earn my wings here. Let's go. Let's do my first deal. Let's see what this is all about. And Ryan has been extremely accommodating. He's been, whiplashing me, trying to get me to get the stuff moving here. And it's been a little bit difficult for me to get through, but I think it's a good step for us. And to be able to get this video out to the membership will really add to building awareness and understanding, and it'll bring questions. Anybody else have any questions? AJ's got a question. He's locked out.
Is the brain something that you guys utilize, or is that something that's available on the platform?
So right now it's something that we built really for proprietary for us. We don't share that with external. However, as a seller, when you're loading a car, the brain is there kind of infused in the user experience. So when you're loading a car, it tells you right away what the car is worth in Canada, wholesale, what the upside is in other markets. Right now, it's only US that we're pulling. In the future, let's say a month from now, I have 4 other markets. Might be worth 18.5% more in the Middle East, 12.5% more in the US, but there might be 20 times the buyers in the US. So we just might not generate an offer that's acceptable in the time. So we basically just try to kind of encourage the sellers to post, similar to Car Gurus, where there's the, great price, fair price, shitty price. Basically, we try to encourage, sellers to price in according to the market, slightly above, Canadian market, because you're taking advantage of a different buyer and an ARB, but not taking all of the fun out of it, because otherwise buyers are not going to want to buy cars that aren't local. So we kind of
I've got a BMW GTS 4 that it's just fallen on its face here in the States. I'm wondering, is that something that would be better in Singapore or some other place?
Let me tell you. Hold on. What year is it?
16.
16
M4
BMW.
GTS. With everything, carbon wheels, the whole 9 yards. And 900 miles.
Okay, so I tell you what, I think my coordinates were in the invite. Scott, you put my email and everything in there?
I'll reply to everybody so they have that.
Okay.
Of course, you're a member of the list. You can go to the member list and pull it down, and you can.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Listen, I will work on that and see. My first response would be probably not, because we've really focused on building out the buying market in the U.S. However, and the other thing is we haven't actually allowed U.S. sellers on the platform, only U.S. buyers. So in 6 months, we're going to allow you to now tap into all of the global business and buyers that we've built that Canadian dealers are now have access to. I mean, we have Canadian dealers. Look, I'm going to tell you this. The export business, it should be illegal in this country. We have dealers who have, 12 stores in their dealer group, and their export division makes more profit than all 12 stores combined in a year.
Oh.
So big money, and big money. And the thing is, no one knows about it. No one talks about it, because these guys don't want anyone to know. We're not holding town hall meetings to teach people how to export cars. We're just raking in money. There's a dealer in a little city, I won't say who it is, he's an exporter. They do 5,000 cars a month export out of this little city. I mean, there's like farms. There's nothing there. 5,000 cars. He's got a $130 million credit facility. He's making $1 million a week in profit. $1 million a week.
Wow.
So, and he has no brand, no nothing. This is in a farmer's field. But he's been doing it for 30 years, and he's got a huge network. But now I'm going to give you the network. So hopefully they don't come after me. But the idea is that we're basically kind of taking, you know, what currently is controlled by 1% of the dealers and giving it to the other 99. Say, here, guys, now you can go do the same thing, right? So
awesome.
All right, guys. Well, we'll get the reply out in the recording, and we're going to send this out to the membership. And Ryan,
What's his website, Scott? What's Ryan's actual website?
TradeExport.com with one X.
So TradeExport.com,
and it's one X. So the trade.
In the invitation.
Sorry. It's one E.
That's right. In the invitation, I put a link in the invitation with their website.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So
and
again,
the kind of version that will allow you guys to kind of go gangbusters will be released on the 17th of July. In the meantime, there's some things that we just do manually, so we could still do deals, which is how we're dealing kind of with Perrin and a select few. But on July 17th, everything's automated. All the currency booking. I mean, it's like I would say it's like ordering a pizza, but you know, it's probably a little more complicated than that and a lot more expensive. But it should be a much more fluid experience.
Yeah, just keep an eye on the post on the list. When you see that Trade Ops X, you know, anything, we're going to actually create a Canadian maple leaf label in those posts. Because that way everybody knows. And I think initially it'll be like, it's a Canadian car. I think there will be
Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm the guy who whenever I saw anything Canadian, I'm like, dude, it takes so long. It's such a headache. The transportation, the money, the exchange, everything was such a miserable experience.
Totally.
And unless somebody was on top of it, it was a dead deal.
There's going to be an inflection point where that label is going to go from it's Canadian to it's a Canadian. And they're going to know it's a TradeX deal that has solved all those problems, and that's what I'm really enthused about.
We have guys, we have like 3 dealers that a lot of our stuff right now is pickup trucks, a lot of pickup trucks. We have 3 dealers that buy a lot now, and this is built over, we didn't know them 3 months ago. So we've, over a 3-month period, built a relationship. They now want, hundreds each, and they're fighting over allocation, where I'm getting calls saying, hey, you told me you're going to give me these, and you're going to, and that's where we're at now. So it's like a frenzy. Yes, because, obviously there's a few factors, supply has gone down, the dollar's gone up, the values are up. There's a lot of things that play into that, but I think it's a great time. And I think it will slowly dissipate that stigma over time, because the reality is it's the same bloody car. They're made in the same factory. There's no difference. And if we put a US Speedo in it, then there really is zero difference between the 2 vehicles.
And I'll speak to your comment earlier. Our average value on the list is $80,000. So
yeah, so we're very similar.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Very
awesome.
similar.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time today, and look forward to next week, where we've got a couple interesting guest speakers coming up. So keep an eye out for the invitation, and thanks for joining.
Thank so much, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ryan.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bill, take care.
Take care, Paul.
Thank you.